A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines.
If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. A different drummer.
And now, coming to you from dead center on your dial, welcome to Risk Parity Radio, where we explore alternatives in asset allocations for the do-it-yourself investor. Broadcasting to you now from the comfort of his easy chair, here is your host, Frank Vasquez.
Thank you, Mary, and welcome to episode 50 of Risk Parity Radio. Today on Risk Parity Radio, it is time for our weekly portfolio review. It's going to be a short episode because I'm about to get on the road, taking a child back to college. But taking a look at what went on in the markets last week, the S&P was up 1.94%, NASDAQ was up 4.19%, TLT, the long-term Treasury bond fund, was up 0.05%, gold was up 1.52%, REITs represented by the International REIT Fund, REET, were up 0.96%. Commodities represented by the fund PDBC were down 1.2%, and preferred shares represented by the fund PFF were up 0.79%. And looking at our sample portfolios that you can find at www.riskparityradio.com, starting with the most conservative portfolio, the All Seasons portfolio. This one is only 30% stocks, and then it's got 40% long-term treasuries, 15% intermediate treasuries, and then the remaining 15% is divided into gold and commodities represented by GLDM and PDBC. And this one was up 0.7% last week, which is actually a pretty big move for this fund. It's up 4.3% since inception last July. Looking at the next portfolio, this is the Golden Butterfly, and this is the one that is 20% total market fund, 20% small cap value stocks, 20% long-term treasuries, 20% short-term treasuries, and 20% gold. And it was up 0.9% last week. It is up 14.1% since inception in July. It is still leading the way amongst our portfolios on the strength of that small cap value fund, which is up 51% since inception. Moving now to our next portfolio, it is the Golden Ratio portfolio. This one is 42% stock funds, 26% long-term treasuries represented by TLT, 16% gold, GLDM, 10% REITs, REET, and 6% in cash. And it was up 1.17% for the week. It is up 12.0% since inception in July. So it had a good week as well. And then moving to our most complicated portfolio, the Risk Parity Ultimate. This is approximately 40% in stocks, 25% in long-term treasuries, 10% in gold, 10% in REITs, 12.5% in preferred shares, and 2.5% in a volatility fund. And this one was also up. It was up 1.19% last week. It is up 11.2% since inception in July. So all of these funds are recovering from losses in the past couple of weeks to the extent they suffered any. Now we're going to our experimental portfolios that use the leveraged funds, TMF and UPRO. The first one is our accelerated permanent portfolio, which was rebalanced last week. And this one is 27.5% TMF, the leveraged treasury fund, 25% UPRO, the leveraged stock fund, S&P 500 stock fund, 25% PFF, the preferred shares fund, and 22.5% GLDM, the gold fund. And it was up 1.93% for the week. It is up 12.1% since inception last July. And now moving to our most volatile fund, which has had its ups and downs this month. It was up this time around. This is the aggressive 50-50, and this one is 33% UPRO, that leveraged S&P fund, 33% TMF, the leveraged bond fund, 17% PFF, the preferred shares fund, and 17% VGIT, a intermediate treasury fund. And it was up 2.32% last week, so it is up 12.34% since inception in July. And now I see our signal is beginning to fade. Sorry, I don't have more content for you today. It was a good week for the portfolios. We will be picking up again in the midweek with some more questions from our listeners. And if you have a question or a comment, please send it to frank@riskparityradio.com. That email is frank@riskparityradio.com. Or you can go to the website, www.riskparityradio.com, and fill out the contact form there, and I will get your message that way. Thank you for tuning in for this very short episode. This is Frank Vasquez with Risk Parity Radio, signing off.
The Risk Parity Radio Show is hosted by Frank Vasquez. The content provided is for entertainment and informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. Please consult with your own advisors before taking any actions based on any information you have heard here, making sure to take into account your own personal circumstances.